Hi, just a short video. A very interesting tweet here shared by Artist Taxi Driver. And it's James Forsyth tweet that he's retweeted here. Interesting straw in the wind. One cabinet minister is arguing that if the Commons won't grant Boris Johnson an election, then the Prime Minister should go for a tactical resignation. And this is an absolutely spot on point, and Artist Taxi Driver says good let him to resign. Corbyn becomes Prime Minister and we can start the most transformative progressive government this country has ever seen. Now that is a really serious point because, you know, apparently Boris Johnson and the Tory party, they want a general election. Now, last week they wanted a GE, okay? And the other parties have held off because they want a no deal off the table first, because there's still the risk that he could still get this no deal in. But there is actually an underlying concern here that with this present cabal at occupying number 10, can we really trust any election that takes place under their leadership? Actually, we can't. That's the fact of it. We can't. We are dealing with a government that is anti-democratic, anti-law, anti-EU, anti-human, anti-rights, anti the NHS, you name it. They are actually fascists, because any government that is fundamentally standing against human rights, as we know for a fact this government is actually a fascist. That's how you define a fascist. A fascist will deny human rights to certain groups of people on the strength of their colour, their gender, their how much wealth they have, their social background, their political leanings, or their faith. This is the the root of fascism. That's what fascism thrives on, all of these kind of divisions and the measures that they set against people, that they can, you know, condemn a whole group of people because they have a particular colour skin, or they can condemn a whole group of people because they follow a particular faith. They don't deal with facts. They deal with judgments based on opinions, based on myth. Usually myth. Well, we know it is a myth that, you know, being brown-skinned makes you an inferior human being to being white-skinned, or that being white-skinned makes you a superior human being to those who are brown-skinned. We know this is a myth. So these are opinions and judgments the fascists carry that are based on myth, you see. So we are dealing with a fascist government that predictably depends on lies. This whole Brexit issue is here because of a pack of lies that Britain was persuaded to vote for. Not the whole of Britain, England and Wales. Scotland weren't persuaded. Ireland, Northern Ireland weren't persuaded. And we're talking about only a 4% lead on the side of Leave. And when you factor in the illegal finances, the lies, the criminal invasion of British citizens' privacy, online privacy, being targeted by social engineering global corporation, hired by the Leave campaign, you know, that 4% is not viable, because with that much money spent, you know, they didn't only get to 4% more to persuade half the population to vote Leave. You know, they probably reached more like 20%. I think if there was another referendum now, we would see very likely between a 10 and 20% increase on the side of the Remain. So this is a serious point, because if they really felt that they could win an election, then resign, Boris Johnson. Resign. But he's the clown that they've elected to do the job, like they've got their Trump clown in America to do the dirty job that their own consciences won't let them do. But they know Trump will do it, because he's a total narcissist, thick-skinned narcissist. And they're hoping that Boris Johnson is going to prove to be another Trump. And that he'll just, yeah, Supreme Court judgment, well, they were wrong. No, they weren't wrong. They were absolutely right. You were wrong, Boris Johnson. Your advisors were wrong. You have lied to the Queen, and now they've admitted it. So resign, Boris Johnson, and then let's have an election. You see, but he won't resign, will he? Because then his whole cabinet would have to go with him, because that's it. The government's gone election, and there would have to be an interim government, and they would not have control of the election. But more than that, they won't have control of the BBC and the media, will they? Because being in power does give them powers. So he isn't going to resign. But he could do it. And so now, I think that any time any of these bojo clown people that get on the BBC or Channel 4 or in Parliament, the minute they start talking about, well, give us a general election, so you stand up, you say, resign. Resign, Boris Johnson. If you want a general election, if you think that'll help, resign now. Let's have an election that you people, you criminals, are not in control of. Because I personally do not trust any elections in this country right now under these criminals. And it's, you know, I don't like to burden people with worries and things, but I think we do need to just face reality. We have to face reality. These people are going to do whatever they can to get their hard Brexit. And it's all here. These EU tax regulations do mean that a lot of very powerful and wealthy people, their businesses are going to be held up to scrutiny of EU tax regulations now. And it is a very, very serious issue, because they have been committing some very serious crimes. So we need to be aware now. I'm just putting out the warning out there. They are going to play whatever nasty tricks they can, because we are talking about some seriously nasty criminals with their backs against the wall. Okay? Now, Javid, when this was written, you know, he was considered a contender to replace Theresa May as leader. Now he is the Chancellor of the Exchequer under Boris Johnson. But he worked as a banker in Singapore, okay? And he's spoken about using tax cuts and deregulation as part of a shock and awe strategy to transform the post-Brexit UK economy. I'll leave you this link. It is all about these tax regulations. It's this that has triggered this whole Brexit issue. It's this that triggered the referendum. And they had to find a way to sell it to the British people, to the average British citizen, who was going to lose out big style. So how do you convince them to vote? That's why, like all fascists, they have to depend on lies, myth, opinions and judgments that are based on lies, opinions and myth. Because that's what it's about. You know, Singapore as a tax haven, which is what they want to... You know, senior government ministers have been signalling the Singapore-on-Thames development strategy since January 2017, when Prime Minister May and her Chancellor Philip Hammond both flagged it up as a potential route. Since then, other senior ministers, including Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt and Home Secretary Sajid Javid, have signalled that this is the model they would pursue post-Brexit. Just to put this in context, Singapore has rapidly expanded its role as an offshore financial centre in the past decade, currently ranks number 5 on the Financial Secrecy Index and has a secrecy score of 67. That secrecy score reflects general weaknesses in Singapore's corporate transparency regime and a low level of commitment to tackling corporate tax dodging. So how are they going to... What's the Singapore-on-Thames visionaries appear to have in mind can be summed up as a commitment to sweeping tax cuts for corporations and mobile rich people, tax wars as a fiscal weapon, tax measures such as accelerated capital allowances to attract mobile investments to UK, comprehensive deregulation, removal of social and environmental protections, weak or non-existent compliance with international anti-money laundering measures, retaining golden visa arrangements to provide residence rights of wealthy non-British citizens, increasing exposure to oligarchs and corrupt illicit financial flows. So, they literally want to make Britain the money laundering centre of Europe and the world. So basically, Britain will be feeding off all the crime committed in this world, drugs, crimes, human trafficking, money earned through abusing children, sale of illegal sales of arms and illegal weapons. That is what they want. Sitting on the doorstep of Europe, there to attract all the filth from Europe as well. And don't forget, all these rich people, once they get up here, get into Britain and set up their little private company, they have their own lawyers. They're at liberty to bring as many people as they like from abroad, as many of their staff as they want from abroad. Seriously, people, I'm not joking. Get real. We need to wake up, because we have been living in fluffy la la BBC Archerland for way too long, and that's why they've been getting away with all this stuff. It's been going on really since Thatcher, this creeping by stealth. How do you think the predator catches their prey? By stealth, camouflaging in the background. But I'm a Tory MP, and this and that. They're fascists. And they want to rob us. They want to turn us all into slaves. They want to take every last bit of private property owned by the average British citizen. They've already been hacking away at our businesses with their fake companies and their fraudulent criminal activities that have robbed people of their pensions and trust funds, you name it. They've been robbing British people from the very top right down to the very bottom. And so I'm going to leave this link, and thank you for taking time to listen. Thank you to Artist Taxi Driver for sharing this, and thank you to James Forsyth, very astute and yes, a very interesting straw in the wind.